Welcome to NBR This Week, a look at NBR's leading stories. New Zealand markets have stabilised after slumping on Thursday when the market suffered its fifth largest loss, falling 3.6%. New Zealand's Retirement Commissioner Diane Maxwell has urged calm over the turbulence, saying the drop over the past 2 days should not be a reason for people to mess with their KiwiSaver funds. Many analysts are terming the decline a much-needed correction and a chance to snap up some discount stocks rather than something to panic about. Grant Walker spoke on Thursday to Head of Private Wealth Research at Forsyth Barr, Rob Mercer.
We've been waiting for a reasonable correction since August, and we haven't placed an order into the market till today. Basically, we've built about 12% of cash up because, we were looking and hunting for sort of where we saw better value in the market. And that's starting to appear. So we've dipped our toe in the water for the first time today.
Meanwhile, New Zealand Super Fund Chief Executive Matt Winneray says the $39 billion fund could lose $20.3 billion of its value if a global financial crisis was repeated. He's outlined the dire scenario in the super fund's latest annual report in a bid to warn the public and government that its investment policies, which include having a lot of equities and often buying shares as the market drops, can lead to a bumpy ride on returns in the short term for long-term gain. So is he predicting another GFC? He spoke to NBR's Fiona Rotherham.
We're not predicting a GFC, by the way, and always the next crisis is going to be different from the last crisis. So, we point out in the annual report, look, there was a sharp fall, there was also a sharp recovery. That's not typical of these things. Sometimes the recoveries can be longer, sometimes the falls might not be as steep. But the point is, there is going to be volatility.
The Powerhouse saga continues, with a large chunk of its shares swallowed up by a Chinese buyer. A substantial holding notice to the ASX shows United World Group Property, controlled by Hong Wang, has bought 19.17% of Powerhouse shares. This equates to 5.5 million shares, which were bought in 3 transactions. This comes after Chief Executive Paul Viney quit last week, followed by Company Secretary and General Counsel Rachel Triplow a day later. Battle lines have been drawn between fund manager Elevation Capital and NZX, after Elevation accused the stock exchange operator of failing to deliver good returns for shareholders. The NZX rejected, quote, 6 unreasonable demands made in a proposed standstill agreement by Elevation last week. Among those demands, the resignation of 3 NZX directors to be replaced immediately by 3 new directors of Elevation's choice. NBR's Tim Hunter says this is an extraordinary demand given Elevation owns such a tiny percentage of the NZX.
There was absolutely no chance that NZX would agree to it. Coming from a shareholder with that level of stake, 2.3% or thereabouts, it was utterly unreasonable to imagine that NZX was ever going to say, we'll sign over our directors, definitely we'll do that. So quite why that was proposed is unclear. It may have been some sort of negotiating tactic. Even if it was a negotiating tactic, doesn't look like a very good one.
NBR's Jenny Ruth asked the question, is Fletcher CEO Ross Taylor jumping the gun with the Steel and Tube hostile takeover bid, as he asked investors to trust him on the merits of the deal? While Mr Taylor tries to shake off the obvious group performance issues he inherited, he says a Fletcher and Steel and Tube combination would be very good for customers, although the Steel and Tube board see it differently. Dame Jenny Shipley has firmly rebutted any suggestion of wrongdoing as the Mainzeal liquidator court case continues. The former Prime Minister has been giving evidence at the Auckland High Court, one of several directors being sued by the liquidator for alleged reckless trading and breach of director duties when they let the company trade with negative equity. She told the court she was aware of Mainzeal's directors were responsible for ensuring the company was solvent while it traded. However, she maintained that right up until the receivership in 2013, Mainzeal was showing signs of growth and had become a more diverse and balanced business. So who wants to be a millionaire? Mostly everyone, right? But it happened this week for 82 people, including 32 Kiwis employed at New Zealand-founded but UK-based fintech provider FNZ. In one of the world's largest fintech transactions of the year, 2 investment funds, CDPQ and Generation Investment Management, which is chaired by former US Vice President Al Gore, have paid $3.35 billion to buy out the shares held by General Atlantic and HIG Capital. About 400 employees are shareholders and will continue to own a third of FNZ's equity. FNZ was founded in 2003 by Adrian Durham, and First New Zealand Capital Chief Executive James Lee says the sale is an amazing New Zealand story, putting it a close second to New Zealand's largest fintech, Xero, which was valued at $5 billion earlier this year. And as you know, Rodney Hyde never holds back in terms of his thoughts on taxation, as is the case with the possible capital gains tax. In this week's column, the most commented story of the week on NBR, he says the tax has the distinction of, quote, being at once the most damaging of all taxes and the easiest to avoid.
So the whole thing is nonsense. We shouldn't be surprised by this. The whole point of having a working group is to provide some sort of cover at a great deal of expense for a government to introduce new and novel ways of taking our money. The only thing that surprises me about it actually is that the argument is so sloppy and the proposition of a capital gains tax so absurd.
Mr Hyde also says a capital gains tax is the last thing any economy needs. Looking ahead to next week, it's an alternative investment concept that's proved highly successful in the US. So can it work here? NBR's Kalida Stewart-Menteith has the answer for you on Monday. And for more on these stories, head to our website and have a great weekend.
To unlock your 2 free articles a week, head to nbr.co.nz.